Welcome to Powering Through Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Teresa Sims. I am a coach, an author, wife, mom, survivor, and thriver. Each week on Powering Through Life, my guest and I will discuss a special topic that is close to their heart. Together, we will explore the challenges they faced in life and learn what strategies and tools they have used to power through their lives. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and let's motivate the world through conversation. I have the most amazing guest with me today. His name is Joseph Kajy. Is that correct, Joseph?
That's correct. You got it right.
Thank you. Joseph is a husband, father, business owner, and life coach. And he's a living example of that no matter what your past or your situation was, if you do the work through self-reflection, anything is possible in this world. And I totally agree with that. And I think, Joseph, you are just such an inspiration. And I thank you and welcome to Powering Through Life.
Teresa, it's such a pleasure to be here. Even now, you just saying that of just being an example. Isn't that what people are looking for nowadays? It's almost like, is it possible? You know, what's possible? When we get stuck in our own head, we think nothing is. And I've been there before. And I just want to be that person to tell somebody, listen, I had a messed up life. I was lost, but anything is possible. Anything is possible. And I want to be that example.
It is. And, you know, I think if you and I can each touch one person in our lives, I think we've been very successful.
100%.
Because we have such pasts and such experiences and such knowledge and wisdom to share that we're doing harm, I think, if we don't share.
Absolutely. I always say it gives our past a purpose too. You know,
very true.
We're always trying to everybody's trying to find their purpose, and every individual has a past, and there's some things that everybody's overcome. I just believe that I can help people with the ways that I've overcome. So whatever I've overcome and I've dealt with, I feel like that's how I'm best intuitive to help people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And from the little bit I know of you so far, I have to 100% agree with what you just said. So I love the topic that you've chosen today. It's not being a victim to your past and rewriting your story. Mm-hmm. So Joseph, would you like to give the listeners a background on your story?
Yes, absolutely. Well, man, my story is, you know, right now I'm 31 years old and people look at me now and it's so different from the man that I used to be. You know, what's amazing, I say this all the time, God's given us gifts, but it's up to us how we use those gifts. And I was very lost. What happened was I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and I grew up around a lot of family. I was an athlete. I played sports. And I would say I had a pretty good life, you know, nothing traumatic. You know, there was some things that happened to me in my childhood that I didn't think were causes of anything traumatic, which I can, you know, kind of get into some of that stuff also. But the main event happened when I turned 14 years old and I was moved from Detroit, Michigan to where I live now, which is Jacksonville, Florida. It was a big culture change for a young guy like me. And instead of just saying this is going to happen for me, I was angry. I was angry at the people who did it and my family. I really believed I was a victim. I fell into self-pity a lot of, you know, man, I'm not getting along with people and I don't have friends because of I'm different. Or, you know, I would be known, but I'm not known because I'm the new kid. I just blamed all the outside circumstances to my situation. I never tried to do anything to make it better. If anything, I self-sabotaged and I actually tried to make it worse. And I find even nowadays, you know, we do that. We look at our situation, and when you start looking at things you can't control, you become a victim and then you become self-sabotaging. And people think, really? And sometimes we do it without even realizing we're doing it. And I did that. At age 14, I started to self-sabotage. I started to not even try to enjoy anything in life because I thought if I did, I had a resentment towards my father for moving us here. So what happened was I felt like if my dad was going to see me enjoying it, he would think it's a good thing and he would be happy. And again, I was so angry and I felt like the victim that I wanted to stay the victim. So what I did was I got depressed. It was almost a very lonely feeling of just when you're in that victim mentality, it's you against the world. You don't want to make friends. You're not open to anything positive. You almost, you know, shun it out. And you're like, I don't even want anything to do with that. And that led me into my first addiction, which was opiates. when I first started taking opiates, it's funny. I talk about addiction all the time, and I say drugs are not the problem. Opiates weren't the problem. They were just my solution to how I dealt with my depression. And once I found that solution, I told myself, this is the solution I'm going to take for the rest of my life. I don't have to feel anything anymore. I don't have to worry anymore. And it numbed my feelings. And I did that for almost 12 straight years. The only times I ever stayed sober was when I got arrested. That was the only times, or the 30 days in treatment that I was put in. But and what the addiction led me to doing was, it was every single day I woke up is, how do I get money? How do I find drugs? And then I'll figure everything else out. It was, it's crazy when we live in our own world sometimes and you're so lost and you're in that victim mentality. What I believe happens, and this is what happened to me, is I was so numb to what was actually going around me. Like, people that would tell me, Joseph, you need to change, you need to get better. I believed in my own mind that you guys are crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm okay. I'm fine. You're the one. My perception of what was really happening around me was so blind. I was so blinded by it. And what ended up happening is I ended up started committing crimes just to get money. I would steal from family members. I would steal from anybody and anyone who had it. And what's crazy about that is I didn't even at the time think what I'm doing is wrong. At the time, I thought, this is just what I have to do. Fight or flight. If I don't have drugs, then I'm going to get sick and it's not going to feel good. And that's all I cared about. All I cared about every day. If I met you, it was, what can I get from you? And that led me, the first time I was arrested at 18 years old. And as crazy as I was arrested and I had 6 different felonies. These were first-degree felonies. And I remember talking to one of the inmates that was there when I first got arrested. I'm still so lost. I still think I am going to rule the world and nobody can tell me what to do. And I remember it was right before Halloween. And I remember telling him, man, I really hope I'll be home for Halloween. That'd be awesome. And he looks at me like, do you really think you're going home like that soon? Are you that blind to what's going on? And he was right. I didn't. I spent 9 months in the jail with my case, and I ended up doing 2 years in a Florida state prison.
Wow. You had a lot going on. And was it all because you were wanting to punish your parents or your dad for moving you, but you ended up actually punishing yourself more than anything else, right?
That's exactly right. It was a resentment that I had towards other people.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I made the poison to give to them, but I drank it instead. And that's what resentments do. Resentments and anger do nothing to other people. Like, nobody else was dealing with what I'm the one who's suffering. And I'm thinking that, oh, I'm so angry at them. I don't want to talk to them. I'm going to make my life terrible. But it wasn't hurting anybody but me. Like, yes, my family had to go through it, but I was self-sabotaging myself. And that's what resentments are.
It's like holding a grudge against someone. That other person doesn't know you're holding that. And you can spend your entire life rotting inside because you've got this anger and this issue that you're not talking to this person about. They don't even know it exists. But you think, oh, they're going to get it someday because I'm so angry at them. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a self-defeating purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, and in the program that I'm involved with that helped me get sober, that I'm sober now with a little bit over 5 years, coming up on 6 in January. And in the program, what they say about alcoholics and drug addicts is resentments are the number one reason why drug addicts and alcoholics relapse. And the reason why is because what happens when you have a resentment is all you do is you have anger. And anger is a secondary emotion. There's a reason why you got angry. And anger does never evolve into anything good. You could be angry at somebody and not even show them that, but when you're angry with somebody and you're holding on to that bitterness in your heart, it stops you from actually being able to help somebody. It stops you from actually loving anybody because you're just continuously pouring on that anger, and anger blocks love. I believe that 100%. And once you're blocking love, I believe, for me at least, I go back into the self-sabotage. And it's not like it happens overnight. I always say, like, somebody who self-sabotages, they didn't start that day. It happened maybe months or years ago that they just didn't deal with something. And that's why I just think nowadays we're getting so angry at people that we can't control. It does not do anything for us. It blocks our heart. It's literally like the kryptonite of love.
Well, yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, why would we want or feel the right that we have the right to control someone else anyway? All we have control over is who we are how we present, what we do in this world, and how we live our lives. We have no control over anyone else or how they're going to feel if we relapse or how they're going to feel if I, whatever the case may be. But it's you have to get out of that poisonous atmosphere and that poisonous self-talk, right? And self-sabotage. So yeah. What else went on, Joseph, for you?
So when I got out of prison, people would probably think I was about 21 years old, and they're like, okay, now Joseph learned his lesson, right? He went to prison. It was not a great experience in prison. We don't have to go into that because I want to talk more about the hope and the good stuff. But all prison did for me was it put me away. That's it. I didn't do anything with my time. They even say something in prison is you either do your time or you let your time do you. And I let my time do me, which means I just wasted my time and it did nothing for me. So when I came home, I didn't even think I was an addict, to be honest with you. I didn't think I had a problem. I just thought, man, I was really going hard on drugs. That was as far as I went. So I told myself when I come home, let me just enroll in college and get back on track, work, I'll do things. Well, what happens is you took the drugs away from Joseph and he's stuck with me. I'm still stuck with Joseph. And that was really hard for me because I had regret. I judged myself. We're the hardest critics on ourselves. So there was so much that I knew that I did. There was so much pain. There's so many people that I knew I hurt. And I never faced it. I just ignored it and thought it would go away. Well, it didn't, because when you lay your head at night and you're brushing your teeth in the mirror, hopefully you brush your teeth, and you look at yourself in the mirror, you see all the things that you think you don't see. And I would look myself in the mirror and still think I'm a terrible person. I thought I was a thief. I'm a convicted felon. I put these, I would call them sentences on my life to say, this is who I am. I thought my past was who I was. And to be honest with you, Teresa, I don't even know how quick I relapsed, but it happened like as if I was thirsty. I got a drink of water. I just remember all of a sudden, and it's as crazy as it sounds, which is how unaware I was of my own emotions, how unaware I was of my own intentionality, that I remember after I left the drug dealer's house, which was probably about a month after I got out of prison, thinking, why the heck did I end up here? But all I know I did was I wasn't feeling good, and the only way Joseph knew how to feel better was use drugs. That was all I knew. Yeah. And then down that road I went again. I went there. I was in and out of either about to get arrested and my parents saving me, to losing a job, to getting another one. And I was telling you earlier that God has given us gifts, and it's up to us how we use them. Now, I know today I have a gift of speaking, and I'm a good at, whether you call it persuasion, whether you call it sales, whether you call it dealing with people, whatever you want to say. But I use that gift of how I can talk to people to manipulate to get what I wanted. It was never to serve other people. I only use it to serve myself. And when God gives you a gift and you only use it to serve yourself, you will not enter that gift the way God intended it to be. So within 3 years, after 3 years, I ended up getting arrested again. I was on probation already, violated probation because I showed up at the probation office with drugs in my pocket, with a stolen item in my vehicle. That's how lost and crazy I was, to say that it was almost like people like, did you not care? I was like, I was oblivious to anything I was doing. I had one track in mind: get money and get high. That was all I focused on. Wow. And that time I got arrested, I served 3 years in a Florida State prison, and they gave me 2 years probation.
Wow. That is a lot. Yeah. My goodness. A lot. So do you think that, when you said you went to your probation hearing with drugs in your pocket and stolen items in your car, were you crying out for help in some sort of way, do you think?
What's funny is I wish I could say I was. If I'm being authentic, I welcomed suicidal thoughts. I welcomed the thought of getting in trouble, because in my mind, I just didn't care. My life meant nothing. I had not one person that ever met Joseph before he was 26 years old, including my mother, father, brother, sister, would ever have said, man, he's done something good for me, because I never did. So I don't know if it was so much as a cry for help as so much as in not even caring. That's really what it was. If I got arrested, so what? I got arrested. Oh, well, big deal. Like, people would say, well, what if you get arrested? Then you could go to prison. And my mind wouldn't even go there. That's all I would say is if I get arrested, so what? I don't really care. My life sucks anyways, you
Well, you'd
know?
already been there, done that, right? But
Yeah,
that's not a reason to go back and do it again. But
right.
it must have been horrible living inside that for
Yeah,
you.
it
Because I mean,
was.
you moved to Florida at 14 and then you got arrested at 18 and then again later on. You didn't even know who that teenage Joseph was, as you
No,
say. Like, did you ever know who Joseph was in the beginning before 14?
I never did. And that was such a great point that you said is what happens is when we become who we aren't, we have no idea who we are now. So when people are on this track to find out who they are, you have to uncover the past, because the reality of it is the things that I've done is not, it's just things that I've done. It's not who I am. And once I could face those things and take off Joseph's glasses and put on another pair of glasses, because my glasses don't see anything that I really understand. And I had to get other people in my life. I needed other people around me to give me their perspective, because that's what I lacked. I lacked perspective. I lacked perspective of, hey, man, you're really not a bad person. Hey, you're actually a good person. I knew there was a good person inside of me, but my actions in my past proved that to be different. And that's the thing sometimes, even now, whether somebody's in addiction or they're dealing with something, we look back at the things that we've done that maybe we regret, or maybe mistakes that we made, and we think that's who we are.
Yeah, and our mistakes, honestly, should not define who we are. And that's one of my phrases is our past should not define our present or our future. Because we, as and move forward in life and making changes and doing self-work, we're not the same people we were. So did you have anyone at that point in your life that you could actually talk with? Because it sounds like had maybe you had someone when you'd moved to kind of, talk you through things or just to be a sounding board for you, maybe it wouldn't have been quite the same, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I grew up in a culture where we don't talk about this stuff. I'm Middle Eastern. My parents were born and raised in the Middle East, and like even my dad, we still till today it's very like manly type of conversations, not like what's really going on in your life. So and to be honest, at such a young age, I didn't even know how to do that. I didn't really even know how to open up. I mean, it seemed like a weird thing. And what's crazy, that was a 14-year-old me, but how many people today are 30, 40, 50, 60, and they still don't know how to open up. And one of the
Yeah.
reasons why is because we're so afraid of getting judged. And that's how it was for me. I didn't want to talk to my friends about how sad I was and depressed I was to be living here, because I just thought they would judge me. I didn't know that, I didn't think they would actually help me. I was so worried about what people would think about me if I was real with them that I never became real. So from 14 to 26, I didn't have anybody that, and I put a responsibility on myself. It's not that I didn't have anybody. I just chose not to even open the door. Who knows if I opened that door, if people would have said, hey man, do you want to talk about this? I've been through the same thing. This is how I dealt with it. But again, I was a victim. When you're a victim, you're not looking for help because everybody else is the problem. So I didn't even try to open the door to anybody, to be honest and be open and be transparent. And that's where the self-sabotage happened. I still know today, if I'm not honest and open with other people about what I'm really going through, if people think that I'm 5 years sober today and I don't go through life, that's not the case. I still go through a lot of stuff. But if I keep it on the inside, what happens is we start coming up with, especially like fears. If I keep some stuff on my inside, my fears will control me. I'll start creating crazy scenarios that actually happened. And as soon as I pick up the phone and call somebody that I know and I start telling them what I'm going through, what I'm struggling with, and they give me another perspective, I'm like, oh man, it's crazy. I didn't see it that way. But we need that. We need that sometimes, because sometimes, the addiction centers in our mind. That's where the disease is. It's in our mind. Everything is up here, and that's why, we were talking earlier about having to talk about business. And for me, this is the stuff I want to talk about, because you can talk about, I heard this the other day, you can chase 7 figures all day long. But what about being a 7-figure husband? What about being a 7-figure father? Who's talking about that stuff? Because you can buy a car, you can buy a watch, but you can't buy character. You can't buy a good father. You can't buy somebody who's there for his children. You can't buy a good husband. You can't buy those things. Those are irreplaceable. And that's the stuff that you can't put a dollar amount on.
Very true. Very true. And to be there to show up for your kids, to make sure that they're not experiencing the same things you are. I imagine you're very in tune to what's going on with them and watch for the subtle signs that you are aware of because you went through it.
Yeah, of course. And you know, that's the thing about our past. It's crazy. I was just talking to a guy I'm working with in recovery, and he was judging himself for how he thought before. Because he was like, I can't believe I was angry with that person and how I thought before. And I said, John, brother, you can't change that. But let me tell you something. That's the reason why you're going to become a new man. Because you know that way of thinking and how it feels. You know that way of thinking led you to self-sabotage and being a victim. I'm so grateful that I went through everything I went through because it's given me my perspective today. That's why I don't want to have a resentment anymore because I know what a resentment does because I know what it created. So that's what we can do with our past. We can use it. You know, your past happened. You can't change it. I was molested when I was 6 years old all the way to 8. I can't change what happened to me, but I could use it now. Like it's happened. It's already gone. If it's painful, I respect that it's painful, but do something with the pain. Don't just sit in the pain because then you've given that pain power over your life.
Yeah, very
And
true.
you can't change it. You can't change it.
And then once you give it power once, it's got a hold of you and then it just sits there in the background and absorbs and absorbs and absorbs who you are, the essence of who you are and who you will ever be because you let it in. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, Joseph. I love the way you present this. It's fantastic. So why do you think most people still struggle with the mistakes of their past?
Because we're the worst critic. You know, we criticize ourselves. We're trying to, you know, we're in a world today where motivation is becoming big. You know, people are looking for the next thing to feel better. People struggle with their past, to be honest with you, because they've never actually dealt with it. You know, they just look back at it. And when you just look back at it, like if I were to open the door to my past and just open it and look at it, it was a fire. It was a mess. It was trash. I mean, think about your trash can. If you went to your trash can and it started to get full, if you don't ever take the trash out and you just start pushing the trash down, eventually it's going to overflow. And what happens when we don't look at our past is those things in our past that we're judging ourselves and that we think it's who we are. Oh, my failures. Oh, maybe somebody even who was married and went through a divorce who thinks they can't be a good spouse anymore because they're looking at their past and they're thinking that's who they are. But instead of it, let's look back and see what are some things we could have done differently there. Can we use our past now to become better? Where's our part in it? Instead of just saying, oh, you know, I was an addict and I'll always be an addict, or I'm a divorcee, I'll always be a divorcee, or a business owner who started a business and failed, I'm not a. Instead of looking at it, what can you learn from it? And people now, like the trash analogy, they just keep pushing the trash down. And what I encourage people to do is, can we take the trash out so we can put a clean bag in there and now start a new way of life? Because if you don't, people may not know this, and I believe this happens to a lot of people today. When you're not looking at your past or you're not realizing if you are judging yourself because of the mistakes you've made in your past, it's overflowing in other areas of your life. It's overflowing in your relationships. It's overflowing in your spiritual life. It's overflowing in your workplace. You may not just realize it, but it's overflowing there. And that's the most beautiful thing that I was ever blessed with was the gift of the recovery. If anybody's not an addict or an alcoholic, I still think you should Google the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and just replace the word alcohol and drugs with something else that you feel is controlling you. If it's fear, if it's money, if it's women, if it's men. And I promise you what that does is it uncovers your past. It allows you to look at your part. And then the most beautiful thing is you get a spiritual awakening and you're able to now help people through what you struggled with. So I think people just look at their past and they think it's who they are. And that's why they don't want to look at it. And my encouragement to anybody who's doing that is, listen, when you look at your past, you look at your failures, it's just something that happened. But if you don't want to have anything like that happen again, let's look at it and see what we could have done differently to avoid it, because I promise you it's going to come up again.
Very true, until you deal with it completely. And I totally agree with you on that, because it took me, oh my goodness, 50 some odd years to come face to face with mine. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, every once in a while you do develop the tools to be able to move into your true power, your true self. But every once in a while, there's another thing that comes and slaps you alongside of the head saying, wait a minute, I'm testing you. And these are all tests.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we rise to the test. Are we going to take the bait or are we going to make the change?
Yeah.
And powerful things happen when we ignore the bait, make the change, and grow. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's what you're talking about right now is self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It's reflecting on yourself. And nowadays is it's almost like people aren't doing that. It's let's blame the president of why I'm where I'm at. I'm going to blame my wife of why I don't have a good marriage. I'm going to blame my workplace and my boss for why I'm unhappy at my workplace. Anytime you are focusing on something that you cannot control, it is taking energy from you. It is taking hate from you. It's taking love from you. It's creating hate. And it's like, people don't realize, I say this all the time, you have one life. You're not going to get this time back. And the time that we are wasting being angry at something we cannot control can be spent in another area of our life, somewhere positive. It could be spent at home with our children. It could be spent actually helping people. It could be spent in a better place. The time and energy you are spending, and that's where I think people should self-reflect. Where do I spend the most time and energy? Where are my thoughts normally? Am I pessimistic or am I optimistic? When I get angry at somebody, like, can I sit down and actually write down why I'm angry at them? But that causes you to pause. It causes you to do some things. So instead, people are just like, I'm angry at, and they think it's actually easier to just say, I'm mad at them because they don't know how to talk to me, or I'm mad at them because they don't do what I want to do. Well, the truth is, again, it might be easier to push that trash down in the trash can, but eventually that trash is going to overflow.
Yeah, and then you're going to develop maggots and all that other kind of fun stuff that goes along with summertime heat and garbage. Do you think that journaling and writing is a good thing to be doing? Because I know if we're, like you mentioned, angry at some particular person, is it the person you're mad at or an action or something that person did? It's not fair to be angry and hate that person because of an action when that person was doing maybe the best they knew how to do.
That's right. I 100% think so. I think writing things down is very important because it causes you to pause. And then it causes you to be able to sit down in your thoughts and write down. It causes you to be intentional, and like, for example, I was angry at my father. When I realized how angry I was at my father and I started to reflect on my life for the first time when I was 26 years old, I still didn't understand why I was angry. I still felt like it was all his fault. So what I started to do, I said, okay, well, who am I angry at? So I wrote down my dad, and I said, why? I said, because he moved me to Florida, and he should have realized that it was not a good decision. I was young. You're going to put me in a new high school. All these reasons why I was mad at him. And then I realized, what did it affect? Like, why was I angry? And there was a lot of areas of my character defects because I want to look again at me. I'm not looking at my dad. This is looking at me. It affected my pride. It affected my self-esteem. It affected my security. And then the part that's the best part is, what could have I done differently? Or what was my part? So when I sat there, I said, well, I don't know what my part was because I was 14 years old, and what could I have done differently? And somebody told me, well, you could have reacted differently. Now, can you put yourself in your father's shoes and actually think of why he did what he did? And the reality is, we think people are doing things to us. When somebody hurts us, we think they did it to us. It's so personal, selfish, self-centeredness. It's all about me. The reality is, my dad didn't move here to hurt me. My dad just moved here. So when somebody hurts you, they didn't hurt you. They just did something, and you allowed them to hurt you. So we take it personal, like they did it to us. If somebody cusses me out as I walk out of this office, they didn't cuss me out. They just cussed at me. They didn't do it to me. They just did it. It was just an action. So looking back, when I was able to actually reflect and not think about anger, but actually try to see it differently, I removed the anger and I said, you know what? My dad was probably just really doing what was best for us. I know my dad loved me. He worked. My dad put a bed up at the store that he owned. He owned a convenience store in Michigan. He literally built a room so he can take naps in there because he would work every day to provide a good life for our family. My dad would he wouldn't even let me in his house because he was afraid I'd steal from me. But when I went and got arrested, he paid money for me to have a lawyer. So here I am angry at somebody who was doing what he thought was best.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen to me. It actually happened for me. So now what can I do about it? You know, and so journaling, I think when you can do it in that context of who are you mad at, writing things down, maybe sharing it with somebody else. But the biggest thing is change your perspective. Take your glasses off and stop worrying about how it affected you and put yourself in that person's shoes.
I totally agree with that. You know, I've done that a lot too. And I mentioned that to someone else the other day as well. Stop and put yourself for 5 minutes in that other person's shoes. Feel, hear, see, touch, whatever. Use all your senses as to what that person may be feeling at that point in time. You will gain a totally different perspective on the situation. And you probably will see things differently, a little more clearer, with a clearer eye, clearer head, and not hate or anger in your heart either.
Yeah. The word that comes to my mind is have empathy.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I had a post the other day and it got like almost like 600,000 views on Facebook and so many, there was a lot of negative comments also. And then I saw like positive people who were trying to argue with the negative person. And that's what negativity does, right? Negativity spreads, but so does positivity. And the only way to respond with hate or anger is with love. That's the only way. I don't know what that person behind the keyboard is going through to get so upset, but I don't have to allow it to upset me. You know, that person might be going through something. You know, if somebody got mad at you or somebody treated you a way that you thought you weren't supposed to be treated, well, you know what? Guess what? We don't always get treated the way we're supposed to be treated, but let's just respond with love and kill the negativity right there instead of taking anger. And now you're going to take your anger somewhere else and that negativity seed spread. Well, I'm going to dig the root out of that negativity and I'm going to plant a positive seed everywhere that I see the negativity. And that just allows me to think with empathy.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Joseph. I think that is fantastic. So how do you overcome thoughts of comparing yourself to others? Do you still do that?
I wish I can say I never do.
Well, we're human, right?
Right. But today I do it a lot less than before. So in areas that I'll compare myself, because again, I still have things in my life that I'm still dealing with of, hey man, am I being a good father? You know, am I really providing for my family? You know, am I doing the right things for my family financially? Am I making these right decisions? I have these fears that sometimes can still control me. Now, when I allow those fears to control me, most of the time it's because I'm isolating and I'm not talking to anybody about them. But what'll happen, the reason why I stopped comparing myself to other people, because I did that for 12 years when I was an addict. I did that when I tried to even want to stay sober, but I didn't think there was anything I could do because I was looking at what everybody else was doing around me. And the reality, when I found out and I got a relationship with my higher power, and I found out that he created me specifically with specific gifts, he created me with my past, with everything that's ever happened for me for a purpose. It wasn't on accident. I believed it was for a purpose. Well, then I can't be looking at what Jim, John, and Betsy are doing because God's got something for them. So when I'm comparing myself to what other people have, they got different gifts. Those aren't my gifts. They got different stories. That's not my story. And the reality is that's what they got. I don't even want what they have. And I started to really understand, what does Joseph want? What do I want out of my life? Because what happens if you compare, I mean, if right now I took 10 people right now and stood them in front of us and asked them all the same question is, hey, I work every day, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and I'm home every day at 5 o'clock to be with my family, and I don't work on the weekends. Do you think I'm being a good father and provider for my family? I'm going to get so many different answers. I'm going to get 3 people to tell me, oh, that's pretty good, you're there. I'm going to have 4 people tell me, you should be working more. Why are you taking off on the weekends? You need to make more money for your family. And I'll have another guy tell me, well, you should stop doing what you're doing and be home at 3 because that's not enough time to spend with your kids. So now what do I do? You know, everybody's different. And if you're trying, if the reality of when you're comparing yourself, especially on social media now, is like, oh, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like this guy. That guy has gifts maybe you don't have, and you have gifts that he doesn't have. You know, it's and there's things he's good at that you're not, and there's good things you're good at that they're not. So sitting down and figuring out who you want to become, that helped me stop comparing myself to other people, because I realized that one day I'm gonna die. That's gonna happen. One day people are going to be at my funeral. What do I want people to say about Joseph when they die? What do I want my wife to say? What do I want my daughters to say? What do I want my community to say? When I start focusing on becoming that person, because that's actually who I want to be. You know, I want my wife to say that I was trustworthy, that I was always there, that I supported her, and that I loved our family. Well, those are things I'm going to focus on now. When I'm home, I want to focus on being those things because that's who Joseph wants to be. You know, and I struggled with that in the beginning because I wanted to be who my dad and mom wanted me to be to make them proud. I wanted to be who my church wanted me to be to make them proud. So the reality of why I was trying to become somebody else is because I was trying to make other people happy. But then at the end of the day, I was losing myself. And I think nowadays people are comparing themselves to other people because maybe they don't believe they're good enough. Or maybe they don't think that they can do something. So they compare themselves to other people. And when you start doing that, you start looking at what things they have. And you start looking at what you don't have or they do. And then you try to get that. You try to be that. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I got that, but I don't know if that's really what I wanted. And the one thing I never want to do is regret. When I heard this the other day is I don't want to be 90 years old and regret that I never did the things I wanted to do because I can't get that time back. You know, and when we're comparing ourselves to other people, we want to become like them. We want to be accepted like them. But you know what? Well, you don't know what that person's going through.
No, you don't.
You never do.
No, unless they tell you, and still it's not 100%. You will never know what the other person is dealing with or going through or facing. And why, you know, unless they come to you for help, it's really none of your business anyway.
Yeah.
You should be focusing on your own, yourself, your family, and, you know, providing and doing what you need to do to stay sober, stay clean, stay, you know, a great father figure for your family and a great husband figure for your wife. Like that. And the main part is to be the best Joseph can be for himself.
Absolutely. And there's only one Joseph. I mean, there's a lot of Joseph, but there's only one Joseph Kajy.
There you go.
God didn't make three of me. God didn't make three of you. He made you. You're one of a kind. And that's every single human is one of a kind. And I believe that. I believe if people can start looking at what are some things that I want to become, who do I want to be, you are one of a kind. You're special. You have things that this world needs. And if you're going to go be what everybody else is, you're not giving the world and you're not giving people what they need. You have that gift inside of you. Everybody does. Everybody's got a gift from God. I believe that 100%. There's gifts in you. Please don't look at other people's gifts because God wants you to use yours. And that's where you're going to find your purpose, in your gifts, not in other people's gifts.
And that's where you're going to find your pathway too, right? And I know there's one great coaching exercise I like to use sometimes. It depends on, you know, the client. So each client is an individual. One is to write your own eulogy.
Yeah.
So you're talking about that, going to a funeral. Who's going to say what about Joseph, right? So write your own eulogy and then write your own obituary as well. When you go into your heart and you put what you really feel in your heart about, wow, what kind of legacy do I want to leave this world?
Yeah.
Amazing things come out. And you'd be so surprised. I was shocked at what I came up with for myself even. So you just never know, right?
Yeah, and we don't take the time. Like I said, energy spent in places we shouldn't spend them takes away from the other places. We don't do those things because we don't take the time to do it. We're too busy comparing, being mad at this person. But what you just talked about, it creates work. It creates self-reflection. It's taking time in the most important part that needs to be, which is you. Take time and understand you, and understand what you want to do. Like I almost got into business coaching instead of life coaching because I liked business and I thought that's where I can help people. But then I started realizing like, yes, there's life coaching and business coaching, but my real passion is actually helping people talk about the stuff that they never wanted to talk about, understand themselves more than they've ever done because they've never actually sat down and understood, why do I do what I do? What do I really want out of life? Am I not living where I'm supposed to be? Am I not where I'm at? I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. And they just need another perspective. But all I do is I hold up a mirror for them. I don't tell them what to do. I'm just getting them to understand themselves a little bit better. And then at that point, once they understand themselves better and what they want, they start making intentional decisions. and they start
Yeah.
saying, I really feel like I'm living in my purpose now.
Yeah. And without self-blame,
Of course.
because you can't do that. Self-blame is a useless thing.
Mhm.
It's just shouldn't even be there. But
Yeah.
we do it. It's a natural thing, I think, at times. We just, kind of get in a down mood and, all of a sudden the negativity creeps in.
Mhm.
But you have to just take one action step, right, to get yourself back into a good place where you need to be, where you're positive and you're happy again, you're healthy and you're whole and you're living your purpose.
Yeah. And do it for you. Like what you
Yeah.
said is, it's like, do it for you. Like, man, if everybody knows how special they are, like you are special. I don't care who it is, what you have, do it for you. You owe yourself that,
Yeah.
and I always say that is like, man, we just got to do things for ourselves and reflect so you can be okay, and we think that if we do it, we're going to look at things we never wanted to look at. But no, you've just looked at your past, and you've looked at your mistakes and your self-sabotage in a different lens. Let's put on another glasses and realize, oh, wow, this is how I've developed the habits that are overflowing in my life today. And now I'm going
Yeah.
to make a change. Now I'm going to rewrite my story.
Yeah, and it is harder to change a habit. It takes a bit longer. I can't remember the exact number of days it takes to change a habit, where it is easier to develop that habit. It happens within the blink of an eye almost at times.
Right.
But what you and I are talking about is just self-reflection, digging deep within yourself. Yes, it's a lot of work, but you know what? We're all so worth it.
That's
We
right.
deserve it. We're not put on this earth to suffer. We're not put on this earth to be kicked around by somebody else or even by ourselves. We're here for a purpose and a mission. And when we can find what that mission is, look out, because Joseph's on the go.
That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you are just such a joy to speak with. You've lightened my day, and I truly do appreciate that. Your smile is electric. Your story is so powerful. And I really believe that you will make a difference in a lot of lives. And that's why I wanted to have you on Powering Through Life, because I loved your story right from the beginning, and I can relate to a lot of it as myself.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter what age, what sex we are. No, we all go through similar things.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Had I had someone when I was young too, to reach out with, or to say, I need some help.
Yeah.
Oh, the world could have been totally different for me, but it wasn't my path. Like you say, I needed to go through those things that I went through, like you did, to be able to get to a point where, okay, enough is enough. It's time for me.
Yeah. We're all selfish. We're all selfish and self-centered. And somebody asked me the other day, like, Joseph, what do you think how do you find self-love? Like, how do you start to love yourself? And when he said that, my immediate answer, like, I knew it. I said, start doing things for other people. Start doing something for other people. If you want to love yourself, go serve other people. Go find somebody you can help. There's somewhere in your life you can serve somebody else. And watch how you'll feel when you're done with that. I've done a lot of things. I've made some sales that made me a lot of money. But I promise you, the other day when I went, and a buddy of mine that I was in prison with got out of prison, and I spent about 4 hours with him. Drove down a couple hours, brought him some clothes, bought him a Hardee's burger, and when I left, I don't think I've ever loved myself and felt so good. And when I say love myself, it's not a pride and ego thing. People want to love themselves because they want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel that spirit, which comes from above. That spirit comes from above. And the truth is, I don't find that when I'm doing things for myself. You could have wrote me $100,000 check and I would have cashed it. I wouldn't have felt as good as I did when I was serving him, when I was helping him. And that's why my mission today is to serve and love other people, bring value to other people, because it's where I find my significance. It's where I find my purpose. And then, like you said, you change one life, that one person go change another. And before you know it, we're changing 1 billion lives. And it all starts with one.
And we're on a mission, aren't we?
It's a mission. Until I go out, it's a mission. It's one of. I'm so grateful to be part of this mission. It's amazing the people you get to meet that are on the same mission as you, and just being part of helping somebody, change your life, and to change your life, you just got to change your perspective, and that's all we need. And I want to be that open ear for people. I really want to be that open door where somebody. That's why I do the podcast. It's mainly I want to connect with people. I want them to reach out. I want them to maybe hear something. Maybe it's one thing. Maybe one thing you heard today. It's not like people look at their life sometimes. They think they got to change so much. And in my mind, I'm like, just take one. Take one thing from this call that you heard today that you feel you can apply to your life and start doing it. Start making that change and watch how you're like, oh, wow, this one little thing changed so much in my life. Yeah. And it's just one small change. You don't need to change everything. Just change one thing that you could think of right now.
Yeah, and try that one thing for 7 days in a row straight. See what improvements are made in your life. See how you feel. There'll be more joy. There'll be more happiness within you. And it'll bubble out and it just flows like a river, because everyone around us is going to reap the benefits of us being who we truly need to be and are meant to be.
Yeah, have you heard of the coffee bean analogy?
I think I have, but please tell us.
So I'll tell you, so this doesn't come from me. I'll give credit where credit's due. There's an amazing guy. His name is Damon West. He's on life on parole right now, but he's on a mission to do what you and I are doing. He's changing the world right now. And he heard something that talked about changing your environment. And somebody told him before he went into a prison, they said, there's a coffee bean, there's an egg, and there's a carrot. Now, if you take the carrot and you put it inside a pot of boiling water, that hard carrot will turn soft. And if you take an egg and put it inside of boiling water, it turns hard. Now, if you take a coffee bean and put a coffee bean inside a pot of boiling water, it changes the water. So who you are changes your environment. And his mission is talking about being a coffee bean. And once you become that coffee bean, people are attracted to it. They want it. They want more of, what do you have? What is it that you have? So you are the reason that can change other people around you. It's funny, negativity, it's funny how it bounces off of me sometimes, because I'm like, people don't even want to come around me that want to call me and just complain about stuff, because I'm like, hey, what are we going to do about it? You're mad at that person, what are we going to do? And they're like, I just want to complain. I'm like, don't call me to complain. I'm ready to change. Like, what do you want to change about the situation? If you call me to complain, call a therapist, because I'm not that guy. I'm going to tell you, what can we do to change it so you can hang up this phone and not be angry anymore? Yeah. So being a coffee bean means you will change your environment. I want to be that pot. My wife laughs. She's like, you're like a walking podcast every day that I talk to you. And I want to be that. I was so glad what she said. I'm like, great. That's what I want to be. That means I'm not stuck in my anger. That means I'm not stressed out about all the things that aren't going my way. I'm just trying to pour out and pour out and pour out. And it's how I feel that I'm living my purpose now. I'm just pouring out and giving to whoever I can to make an impact, because what else choice do I have? I've lived that life of not helping people. I know what it's like to not be of significance, to not give anybody value, to just think about Joseph. Me. And today I want to think about, what can I do for you? What could I have done differently on that one?
Yeah, that's incredible. So when Joseph does get down, what do you do to pull yourself back out?
The first thing I do
is... I'm sure it happens, right?
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
When I say a lot, it just happens more than probably people think. When I get down on myself, the first thing I do is I talk to God. My spiritual life is so important to me that people see Joseph today, and I say this all the time. If I hide my story, I'm hiding God's glory, because this isn't Joseph's story. This is what God did for me that I couldn't do for myself. I can sit here and tell you a million God stories. People can call them coincidence. I just choose to call them God. And I have a relationship with him. When I'm feeling down, a lot of times if I'm feeling down, I'm usually down on myself. Like, I'll beat myself up more than I'll be down on anything else. Man, am I really doing good in business? Oh, man, should I be being a better husband? What I realize is, when I'm down on myself, there's some areas of my life I haven't really, I should say, given time to, which, again, one is my spiritual life. One is my community. When I'm doing those things, if I'm in my spiritual life and I'm praying and I'm talking to God, if I'm reading my word, if I'm going to my spiritual groups, if I'm in my community, when I'm doing those things, I'm not down on myself. But when I'm down on myself, I'm isolated. So a lot of times I'm down on myself. The first thing I do is talk to God. The second thing I do is I reflect. And I always, because it's happened to me before, I'm like, man, have I missed a couple things that I should have done that was for other people? Or, man, I haven't really been to my community groups. I've set up things in my life, in my schedule, that I don't change. Like this morning, I went to a men's group where we talk about work and spiritual life, and how work can become our idols, and how we use work to show God. And I go on Sunday. I've set up things in my life as almost as like barriers, and these are like my armor for being down on myself. But I'm a human. I'll cancel sometimes. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm too busy to do this. I haven't prayed lately. That's when I get down on myself. So when I do it now, it goes back to reflection. What am I down on myself on? If I can't come up with the answer myself, 99% of the time I don't, I pick up the phone and I call somebody that I know, that I trust, that knows me well. It could be my wife. It could be somebody in the program. It could be somebody at my church, and really just share with them what I'm feeling. I share with them, hey, man, I'm really struggling today because, I realized, my business is not where it should be. Or I realized, man, I really feel like my wife thinks I'm not doing a good job. She's been asking me to do a lot more. And I'm really thinking I'm not really providing for her enough. Maybe I should be home earlier. I just share my thoughts, and then they'll sit there and tell me, man, most of the time they're like, hey, these are just thoughts. What are you going to do with your thoughts now? Like, do you really, like, are you thinking you're not a good enough husband, or do you need to do things so you can feel better about yourself? And they really just talk to me and give me another perspective. So those are the tools that I do when I'm down on myself. But I always say I'm down on myself when I'm focused on me. It goes back to that. When I'm just focused on Joseph and I'm never down on myself when I'm serving other people. When I leave today, I'm not going to be down on myself. I'm going to go meet a guy in the program in about an hour. We're going to sit down. We're going to do some work. We're going to talk about his past. We're going to uncover it. We're going to start a new chapter. I promise you when I leave there, I won't be down on myself.
Yeah.
So if I do those things while I'm serving other people, that's why it goes back to that. If I'm serving other people, I'm not down on myself.
Yeah, very good. Those are brilliant action steps and tools that you use. So one is to self-reflect. Think about what it is, why you're feeling those things, and why you're so much into your own head all of a sudden. And then reach out, talk to someone.
Yeah,
whoever that may be. Yeah. Don't isolate.
Is a place.
We are communal people. We're not meant to live in isolation. We are a community, and that's what we need to remember. So, we're not the only ones going through things like this.
Yeah, that's right.
There is somebody else out there that needs to hear this. And Joseph, you have been the most amazing guest.
Thank you.
How can the listeners get in touch with you? I will include all Joseph's links, in with the podcast when it's published, but please tell us now.
Yeah. So I actually have my own website that's getting developed right now. So every place you can find me is at Joseph Kajy. So if I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And when I ask you to find me, I'm not asking you to find me, follow me, like my post, and comment on it. I'm asking you to DM me if you're looking just to have a conversation. We just talked about isolation. My podcast that I have is called Let's Get Real, because I want people to get real. Just because you have 20 friends, who are you getting real with today? Is there something you're going through in your life today that you haven't talked about? I don't know you. Joseph will not judge you because I just told you the million things that I did. So I'm hoping when you find me on these on social media, please shoot me a message. Hey, I heard your podcast. I loved it. And I'll give a free call. Let's just chat. Like, I don't even want to sell my coaching. Like right now, I'm actually not even taking spots. So don't worry. I'm not taking spots. I just want to talk with you. That's the God's honest truth. I want to give you that ear to say, hey, man, I've been struggling here in this area, and I haven't talked to anybody about it. And that is sometimes the hardest thing to ever do. But I promise you, on everything that I love, it'll be the greatest thing you ever do, because when we get done talking, you're going to feel like you're 50 pounds lighter. And you're going to feel like you can look in the mirror now because you actually talked about it and you dealt with somebody. So I wanted to say that because when people say find me, I'm not looking for the followers. I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for connection. I want to talk to you. I just want to help you. I want to build that community, and I want to change one person at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what, listeners, I would really suggest you get in touch with Joseph. Have that conversation with him, because you never know. He may be the gift that you need in your life, and you may be the gift he needs in his.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we never know.
I love that you said that.
No, you're very welcome. It's the truth. And you know what? I will be reaching out to you as well if I need. And please, you feel free to reach out with me, because Absolutely. I think it's important. We've got these connections now, and I think it's important and vital that we keep them going, because this is my mission in life, and I've had so many people say to me, well, you need to be charging, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, I don't. This is a free podcast. I will not charge my guests. I will not charge people to listen to it. This is my gift to the world.
Yeah. And even the coaching thing, like I make money on my fence company.
Mm-hmm.
So the coaching program is mainly for somebody who needs something every day. It's an everyday focus that I'm going to focus my time. It's not even like it's more of an everyday type of thing. But there's a lot of people I talk to right now that I'm like, I'm actually coaching this person and I'm not even charged. Like I'm just involved in their life. But I want to add to something that you just said. When you said you don't know what it's going to do when you pick up that phone or you do send that message, I wouldn't be standing here or sitting here talking to you with 5 years sober, grateful for my life, having this light, having God in my life, if I didn't talk to just the first person that I did. It was the first person that I talked to that I said, hey, man, I'm struggling. And I know you mentioned that if you need somebody to talk to, this is really hard for me. This is kind of weird. I remember saying that, but I'm struggling. And him and I sat down and we talked for an hour. That changed my life. That was the trajectory that changed my life. So you have no idea what that one thing is going to do. It's going to be the trajectory that will change your perspective and change your life. So I wanted to share that because it took me back to that time, that the first time I didn't want to do it and I did it. And I'm like, I know I wouldn't be here today if I didn't do that.
Powerful. And I'm so glad you did do that because there are so many people that need to hear your story. So thank you, Joseph, for being an amazing guest on Powering Through Life. And you know what? I want to have you back again for another time. We will book that later on, but I think you have so much more to offer, so much more that people need to hear about getting out of their own head and being their own catalyst and their own activist for themselves.
That's right. And thank you for the platform. Thank you for having this podcast to give people to listen to give the messages out there, because I wouldn't be able to give this message without people like you. So thank you for the opportunity and the time just to take to allow me to share that with everybody.
Oh, you're very welcome. And listeners, like I said, you really do need to have a conversation with Joseph. Don't wait. Do it as soon as you possibly can. I pretty much can guarantee he will talk to you. So
I can guarantee it.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for joining us on Powering Through Life. And again, Joseph, thank you so much. I will have all your information included with the graphic and when your episode goes live, and we will get this shared to the world and start motivating the world through conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Powering Through Life, where we explore life's challenges and learn valuable insights from my guests about how they have powered through their lives to survive and thrive. We can learn incredible lessons by sharing and motivating the world through conversation. You can access all of the Powering Through Life episodes on my website, teresasims.com, YouTube, Facebook, and Spreaker. So join us again next time for another inspiring conversation.